Hello, this is Pat Lynch, and you are listening and watching. Gosh, I'll learn to speak English by the end of the podcast. As the World Turns or Burns, our bi-weekly show that we talk about things that are happening in the world today. And today we're going to talk about free speech and, things of, what's free, what's not free, how things have really changed. Joining me as always is
Kieran O'Keefe,
Brendan Connell,
and
producer Jayson.
Yes, he's back there behind the board making the magic happen. We had bounced a bunch of ideas about just the changing dynamic around free speech, and last week obviously the big uproar was everything around Jimmy Kimmel, and here he is. He makes a joke, not really a funny one, but he makes it poor taste. You could debate that. Next thing you know, he's off the air, and then this comes in the following Stephen Colbert, and then you just start seeing that there's this chill on speech itself. So kind of what are both of your thoughts as far as where are we now and kind of where are we headed?
Well, it was definitely a prime example of cancel culture, which was something the right was really critical of until very recently. And to be fair, I think there were some excesses on the left, like in 2020, 2021, where they went after people who probably shouldn't have gone after to try to quote unquote cancel them.
Right.
But it was never the government doing it. In this case, it was government pressure. It's Trump shouting on Twitter. It's what's it, Carr, the name of the
Brendan Carr, the
FCC chair, who went after ABC, basically threatened them on the whatever podcast he was on. So it was never a Joe Biden or Barack Obama coming out and trying to suppress right-wing speech. It was like companies that were probably too influenced by left-wing activists, you could say, but it was never actually elected politicians. And here's Trump going on, I said Twitter, really Truth Social, just spouting off how it's terrible that Jimmy Kimmel's back on the news now since he's been reinstated, and how 97% of the news coverage is against him, which there is a lot of news coverage that's critical of Trump, but then he's also got like Fox News, Newsmax, One American Network, where he can do no wrong. He walks on water. So it's, I don't know. It just seems very hypocritical to be against cancel culture, to be pro free speech, and it's actually not that kind of free speech. So I don't think it's intellectually consistent.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I think I was in college when this happened, but Hank Williams Jr. was the former Monday Night Football singer. Right. And he got kicked off because of comments he made about equating Barack Obama to Hitler, I believe. Yeah. Or something in that ballpark. And so he got kicked off air. And then, in that situation, it was the right that was very angry about it. But there's a critical difference here. So, ESPN, I guess it was, because they do Monday Night Football, right? They're a private company. They can choose to put whoever they want onto their programming. They can choose to silence speech because, for the most part, the Constitution is really referring to actions of government rather than private actors.
Right.
In this case, though, what makes this different is the threats coming from political actors, actors in our executive branch that are making threats to, suppress free speech in some form, right? So if it was just Disney or whatever private company that that wants to take someone off the air, they can do that because that's actually their kind of First Amendment right.
Right.
But again, when you've got political actors that are trying to coerce private companies to try to get them to speak or not speak a certain way, that's a fundamentally different thing.
You look at it and you take it a step further. Right now, all journalists covering the Department of Defense, they need to get approval from the department to publish anything, any kind of news reporting, but even unclassified. They need to have approval. So, or they lose their press credentials. They basically get canceled out. So, obviously, what's that going to do in terms of the news that gets released? Department of Defense, the FBI. Well, I know that definitely the Department of Defense has their employees now all taking lie detectors. With basically a loyalty oath. You can't, because part of free, when you control speech, then you start controlling how people think. And, now it's almost like, is there like thought control that, you have to prove unequivocally. Yeah, I'm English isn't my thing this podcast, but
it's late in the day.
It's late in the day. Yes, I've been out there educating America's youth, and I deserve a break. But now it's like it's not even what you say, but now almost what you believe, what you think, which overall that puts a pretty big chill on everything, doesn't it?
I think that's a big part of the main reason they're doing this. I don't think they're actually intending to pass a law saying you're not allowed to say X, Y, and Z. It's the chill effect. You make an example of this person and that person, this organization, that organization, and eventually people will just stop criticizing. They shut up. They don't want to deal with the consequences. And that's how it works. I think in a lot of autocracies, it's not necessarily that the government has specific laws saying you can't say A, B, C. I mean, sometimes they do, but a lot of times it's just the incredible difficulty you're going to have to go through if you want to criticize the government. The kind of retaliatory effect that comes from in this case Trump, who really is like a mob boss in this way. He's always like got that New York City mob boss sort of mentality to him, even though he doesn't like necessarily like, I don't know, always seen. You don't think of like a rich billionaire as a mob boss, but he kind of is in some ways in the way that he deals with people around him. It's like running some New York City mob or whatever. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll say what I said on a prior episode, which is, there are some times where you probably want to restrict free speech or restrict speech, right? So no civil liberty, including the First Amendment, is absolute. So then it becomes a question of like where you draw that line. So what forms of free speech are we willing to accept? What are we willing to or be unwilling to accept, right? So what's constitutional, what's not? Where we draw that line in recent history, at least, has never been just, I disagree with it, so now it gets banned. Typically, again, in like modern history, at least, or modern times, it's really about, does that speech create some sort of like imminent danger?
Right.
And if it doesn't, then generally the speech is protected, even if it's political dissent, because political dissent you need in order to make democracy work. Because as you both mentioned, you go to dictatorships, there's caps on how badly you can speak of the incumbent government, and if you don't have those free flow of ideas, you don't really have democracy, because effectively then there's no opposition.
Yeah.
Right. So this is why it's like such an important issue is, the type of free speech that is being somewhat, if not restricted, kind of coerced or these threats that are being made against people, saying things that are bad about Charlie Kirk. It wasn't even bad about Trump, was it? The comments
Kimmel's comment was about that the MAGA, what he called the MAGA crowd, was doing everything possible to shift any potential blame for Charlie Kirk's assassin to MAGA and trying to attach it to leftists or whatever. So, and what you had was a confused, sad young man. His ideology, probably wasn't one. He didn't vote. It was probably all over the map, and what he did wasn't It was political violence because he killed a person in the political arena, but I don't think he was doing it, out of like a political belief. That's just me. But he just was commenting that, how it's something happens and then then the immediate thing is, let's find out like what side they're on. A shooting in Texas. At ICE now, immediately is it some leftist? Is it some rightist? It's that's kind of the environment we're in now, is to immediately that you want to just fast track to blame and then use that to politicize. And then obviously we get to where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one thing I wanted to go back to what you said is going back to COVID and the restrictions that were made on social media as far as, the people that were spreading disinformation about COVID, that got, a lot of that got shut down. How does that now look in the context of where we are right now?
So there's a lot of different directions to take this.
Yeah.
I mean, it was shut down sometimes by the actual companies. Right. So it wasn't the government itself that was doing this.
Yeah.
So that's one critical difference.
Yeah, Meta, Twitter at the time was owned by a different ownership.
Okay. That's like Facebook and Instagram too, right?
Meta's Facebook and Instagram, and Twitter was owned by, right. Yeah, it was a public company.
Right. So I'd say, I mean, if we're just going by like the Constitution, they can do that. They're a private company.
Right.
It's the way it's kind of worked so far. But let's think of it now in terms of like, well, is it worth restricting free speech on social media if that information is misinformation or disinformation, right? Because there could be a potential threat to public safety with the spread of misinformation. That's a tougher question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll give my position on it. I actually adopt like the Wild West approach of the internet.
Yeah.
I think you're going to have garbage and bad information flowing back and forth. I think people need to take responsibility and get better at filtering out what's good versus bad information. Because the other problem too is it is sometimes very hard to figure out what is correct in the moment in real time. And I would be reluctant to give any agency, whether it's Twitter or whether it's the government, the sole power to dictate what is misinformation and what's not. Because sometimes the line is actually a little bit blurry. I know I sound like Joe Rogan when I say this, but there are examples of where we thought something was true at one point in time, or we thought something was myth at one point in time, and then it turned out to be true, or vice versa, right? So I would be reluctant to give the government that power, right? If you're going to give away power to a government, you have to get something really good from it, I would say. And I don't see enough good that would come from this.
Yeah. Well, how about you, Kieran?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think it's very hard, as you said, in the moment to figure out what's true and what's not true. One example that conservatives love to cite and has some truth to it is that there was an attempt to shut down some of the discussion about was it Hunter Biden laptop scandal, which was it Twitter that did that?
Twitter.
Twitter did
it was
it.
Twitter.
And it seemed so ridiculous at the time, but it ended up being more true than not in a lot of respects that there was this laptop. And I think there are a lot of conspiracy theories that have built off that story, but Twitter tried to shut it down, not thinking there was any truth to it, and ended up being much more true than they realized. And that's been a very bad look, I think, for Twitter in hindsight, because it made it look like they were putting their thumb on the scale for Joe Biden in the election.
Yeah. Another thing with this whole thing around free speech is how it's coming to colleges and universities. I was telling Brendan that I listened to a podcast from the Chronicle of Higher Education called College Matters, and they had Christopher Rufo. You guys familiar with him? He's
I don't think so.
He is a right-leaning, far right, if you will, activist that is out there trying to change higher education. And the thing that caught me was that he used a phrase in terms of what are you looking for when you go into higher ed? And what he was looking for are truth seekers. And I got a little chill came over, and so what he just believes is that truth seekers are the ones that are out there that they will basically be DEI deniers, and they're there to just have this what he promotes is he calls a new right-wing civil rights regime by using civil rights as a tool to oppose campus DEI initiatives and other race-conscious practices. His argument is that these programs violate the principle of colorblind equality and that conservatives should use the legal framework to change them. So it's kind of the part that always scares me is when you hear somebody say truth seeker. It's that means they're defining what truth is, where you think truth is objective. There's only there is truth, but in the way he's looking at it, the truth is his. It's like his view of colleges, and so he was responsible for Claudine Gay, the president of Harvard, her removal. They went after her for plagiarism. He was real big part of the whole remake of the new college in Florida. That was, he had his hands all over this, and he's going to slowly, make his way across, first probably like the very visible elite institutions, but then, who's stopping it from that point. So, now we have, have all that because it goes back almost to the authoritarian playbook, that you go after the educational institutions, and now you got people in the government in terms of what they can say, what they can think, and now you got it coming to the academics and trying to rule them, and so there'll be this truth test, and I don't, I'm kind of going on a bit, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I don't know enough about him specifically, but yeah, there's just anecdotal evidence that in some conservative states, controlled by Republicans, that they're looking to take more control over at least state institutes, state colleges within the state boundaries. So a lot of this is driven by, I think the origins really are that higher ed is very far, I think, to the left as a whole of like where the average American is. And so it feels kind of out of whack to a lot of Americans, particularly if you're conservative, where, I don't know what percentage of Americans you want to say are conservative, but they're certainly underrepresented in higher ed. There's just no way around that. Like pretty much any field you look at, conservatives are very underrepresented in higher ed, among faculty, administration, and so on. But it's almost like, that discrepancy has led to what I think is like a great overreaction, where it's like the government can like use force to try to withdraw, funding from Harvard for cancer research because they don't like the makeup of Harvard's faculty or, their administration or whatever else. So I think if you want to make the point that higher ed should be more intellectually diverse, that's a point that I think has some truth to it. But I think the way they're going about it, which is just like punishing these schools and punishing the schools in ways that make them less likely to contribute to society in the many ways they do, is not the way I would go about it. So I guess that's my thought without knowing a whole lot about this individual person.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I mean, it's like people have opinions of what they think the truth is, and that's what they kind of want to enforce. So, I'm sure this is probably one reason the founders didn't give the federal government explicit control over education, but it's even being done on the state level anyway. So, it's something that worries me a bit.
Yeah, and I believe it was that leaked government email that was supposed to be sent to Harvard, and it supposedly got sent by mistake, and one of the demands was almost like a quota system that as far as the balance, as far as the ideology on campus, and basically hire more conservatives if you want to be happy, which is ironic given that like somebody like Rufo is anti-DEI, but he's he want all of a sudden, but he's very much you need to get this. Hire more of this and less of this, and it's well, I mean, colleges have been liberal, if liberal leaning for forever, really, and it doesn't seem to have hurt the rise of the conservative movement. It's not like this is, the three of us are out there. Like, I wake up every morning, brush my teeth, and then I think, how am I going to indoctrinate, students today?
Yeah, I think very few faculty are trying to indoctrinate students. I think there's a little bit of difference of like what kind of school you're at. Somewhere like Lyon is going to be, I think, actually pretty intellectually diverse by the standards of higher ed. I do think some of those elite schools, like if you were to survey the faculty at, I don't know, Columbia or something, it's probably, much different than Lyon in terms of like the ideological makeup. But at the same time, like, how do you, I don't know, what are you supposed to do? It is DEI. If you want to fix it, it's a DEI approach. If you think it's a problem that needs to be fixed, it's a DEI approach. And, obviously they don't want DEI in terms of race or gender, but in this capacity, it's, I guess, more appealing for them. So I don't know. I don't know if it's a problem, and if it's a problem, how would you solve it? I'm not sure how you'd approach that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that academia justifiably gets the reputation of not only being liberal, but oftentimes being kind of out of touch with what's really going on the ground.
Right.
And I'll give myself a pat on the back because this is kind of how I got the Trump prediction correct in 2024. Because
he keeps keeps bringing that
up. It's the only time I've predicted something correct. I've got to, hang my head on something.
That's not true.
Well, I mean, the past football games, I've been getting them all wrong.
Well, hold off. We'll give you another shot.
We'll get to that.
You
Yeah,
got the Packers one right.
That's true. So I'm back on my easy one. I'm back on my winning streak. Yeah, I did pick the favorite.
Okay.
But yeah, so like there's an element of truth to that, and then it's like a question of how do you fix it. One way to do it is through, we want to call it DEI, we want to call it a type of affirmative action where you try to diversify the faculty you're bringing in, but not in terms of race, gender, or anything like that. In terms of political views, which there's got to be legal problems to that, I imagine, because you're just discriminating in a different fashion. I think the solution should be that we all just need to do a better job of doing our job. This is something I don't do maybe a good job every class because I'm human, but I really try to make sure I'm not playing too much of one side.
Right.
When I went to Binghamton University when I was an undergrad, I grew up in a conservative family. My views have changed over time, but as a student, I was definitely right-leaning and conservative, which is fine, by the way.
Right.
But I remember that feeling of alienation, and I was so afraid to speak up in class because all my professors, they didn't agree with my view. So in a way, like it wasn't good for me in the classroom for me to grow because I was just scared to even raise my hand. So I think there just probably needs to be, I don't know if you need formal training for this, but I think professors maybe got to look themselves in the mirror and say, am I truly doing the best job of providing an unbiased kind of presentation of the facts, and am I doing my best to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to participate, right?
Yeah.
Which is that's a part about what DEI is all about, trying to include everyone regardless of race, gender, political affiliation, etc.
Yeah, and also just being, I think, open to having different points of view come on campus. Hopefully, if the government doesn't shut down on October 2nd, Representative Rick Crawford, Republican 1st District House of Representatives, is scheduled to speak here. We haven't promoted it a lot because the shutdown's been looming, and we didn't want to promote a big event, and then he just has to be in D.C. to kind of, either he's out of work, the government shut down, and that's a whole thing, or he's got to be in D.C. to vote. But there's one where, I got the ball rolling to bring him here, and it's important, it's not, because here he is, he's the head of he's the Republican chair of the Senate or the House Intelligence Committee. Mm-hmm. He's got an important role, and he's not like the guy who's always in the news like a Tom Cotton, who, he most dangerous place is between the microphone and him. That's I think that's the way the joke goes. obviously fell flat here. But yeah, it's just having those points of view. We were talking before we went on air about having Turning Point USA, having students have ability to open a chapter. Let them.
Mm-hmm.
We can have the young Democrats.
Yeah.
Young and
no longer, but yeah.
Okay,
Young
formerly known as the artist, formerly known as a Young Democrat, but then if you have a progressive group, that's what college should be, right? Just let people have different points of view.
Yeah, I mean that's what it should be. I think there's growing hostility towards higher ed from conservatives. If you actually look at like the percentage of Americans who say that like higher ed or a college degree is like important to your life, it's just like plummeted in the last 15 years. Yeah. And part of it is like, you're right that colleges have always, at least in relatively recent history, been more liberal. But I think as we move into a much more polarized political environment, whereas in the past those political differences might not have been too difficult to manage. Right. Now in this heavily polarized environment where everything's so divided, I think it's much harder for parents and conservative students to maybe accept the fact that the faculty are usually further to the left than they are.
Yeah. Well, one last thing as far as on this whole thing on free speech is hate speech, because that started to get some legs. Was it Pam Bondi was talking about it, and I don't know if it's just bluster, maybe emotion coming up after Charlie Kirk's assassination, but where do you guys see the whole thing around hate speech developing?
It's funny, because you go back a few years, hate speech was reversed. It was like it was the other way, like silence is violence, words are violent. That came out of the left, especially after the protests in 2020, which was roundly criticized by the right at that point in time. And now it's kind of gone the other way, I feel like. Right. I don't know, I'm always a little bit skeptical of defining hate speech too broadly. It's not that hate speech isn't a thing, but it can be weaponized if you give the government power to determine that, too frequently determine that this is hate speech. You're putting a lot of power in the government to regulate what people can and can't say, and potentially punish people for saying things that sometimes might just be, I don't know, unpopular opinions. Again, I'm not saying hate speech isn't a thing, but I'm skeptical of giving the government that authority to intervene in speech too significantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my position has not changed with this administration. Like, hate speech, I would define it as this is derogatory, hateful remarks. Can't really use the word hate in my definition for hate speech, but negative remarks, inflammatory remarks toward a specific group. But that group does need to be some group that has been discriminated against in history. Like, I think there's like historical precedents for saying that there needs to be certain protections for like discrimination against African Americans or women, more so than discrimination on the basis of age, right? They're both discrimination, but they actually get treated by our courts, right? One is more severe than the other because of just our history with things like slavery and Jim Crow and et cetera, et cetera.
So can I be critical of Ohio State fans without being accused of hate speech?
You can, right? And that's why I would say that's not hate speech. Because
it's hate.
Can't.
It's pure hate.
But the definition of hate speech.
Yes, I get it.
Yeah. Now that said, hate speech, as deplorable as it is, it's protected generally. I don't have a problem with it in the sense that you can say it, and I could disagree with you. But unless that hate speech is very likely to lead to someone getting hurt, violence, which is a different question. Right. If it's not that, then otherwise it's protected. Yeah. So, I feel this way about hate speech toward Republicans, hate speech towards Democrats, hate speech towards this race, this religion. I may not agree with any of that stuff, but this is the First Amendment. It's there for a reason.
Yeah. Well, very good. Jayson, you seem like you had like some like football bets you wanted to throw out there.
Yes.
Well, here I'm going to go on record because. Right now, after Monday, it's clear. This is a stone cold lock. So you can bet your 401k Lions are going to win the Super Bowl. So that it's
like the reverse Cowboys effect. This is our year.
It's this is your year. They've shown the world. Okay,
100 point. I saw a stat. 100 points in the last 2 games they've scored.
Possibly the greatest team who's ever suited up. That's
it's the 98 Vikings by stats.
Dan Campbell is still the coach, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're not winning the Super Bowl.
He's too aggressive. Pat, you need to call
aggressive
him up
is
and give
being
him some
too
sense.
nice.
Be like, look, from a business perspective, you're taking too many risks.
I'll be there in a month and a half. If we can get together.
Go knock some sense into him.
Yeah.
See, it's not like the Packers though, where like you're like a little bit of a shareholder or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. No, but they're going to win the Super Bowl. So, what's a game that you want to?
I was going to say the Monday night football games because this comes out on Mondays, so that way they actually don't just immediately be like, "Oh yeah, bet the farm on this," and it's already over. And
true.
All right. Yeah. Well, there's 2 of them, right?
Yeah. So there's 2 of them. So it's Bengals versus. Who is that? I don't even know.
Well, whoever plays the Bengals is going to win.
You think so?
Well, who's your quarterback now?
Jake Browning.
Okay, like I said, whoever plays the Bengals, that.
Well, they lost 52-3 or something to the Vikings.
48-10.
48-10. Okay,
and
it's a blowout.
The last time they played, Jake Browning actually played against the Vikings. The last time the Bengals played them, because Joe Burrow, he just gets hurt all the time, as Joe Burrow does. But they won the last time, and he had a very great quote on NFL Films that said, "Should have never effing cut me."
Yeah.
Because he was on the Vikings practice squad, and there was like this whole deal, and he's like, "Oh, Jake Browning's revenge game or whatever," and then the Vikings just.
So the Bengal? Do you have it?
So I got it up. So it is Bengals versus. Oh, I'm sorry, the Wi-Fi just actually killed me. So it is Bengals versus Broncos.
What's the other game? I don't want to bet on that.
You don't want to bet on
I'm not a fan of either team.
Yeah.
Whoa. Well, you went to Colorado.
Yeah. I'm not a fan in the sense that I'm not impressed by either team right now. So it's just a hard game to pick.
Okay.
I think the other game's even worse. I'm not gonna lie. Hold on, because there's 2 games.
Yep.
Jets Dolphins. So.
Oh, I can run with that. Okay.
That's a worse game.
I know my Jets.
Okay.
Let's see.
So you think the Jets are gonna win then? You're going that farm on the Jets?
Am I allowed to know? Is Fields still injured? The quarterback.
Yeah. What do you mean? Are you allowed to know? This isn't like a debate. It's like
I want to make a good prediction.
Fields still is on concussion. Yes.
Okay.
I would pick the Broncos to win the other game.
Yeah, I was thinking Broncos.
Where's it being played? Any idea?
It's being played in Mile
High. Yeah. Broncos.
Yeah. Broncos country. Let's ride, as they say.
Okay.
But yeah. So Jets. That's your pick. Jets versus Dolphins.
Is it in New Jersey?
I would assume so because the Jets just went to the Buccaneers, and they went to and they went to wherever they were for the Bills. So
okay. I don't think it mattered. I'll go Miami. I think Miami gets their first win.
Yeah, this is the 0-3 bowl. Yeah. Both teams are winless, so somebody's got to win, right? It could end in a draw, 0-0.
It's never the Jets, so.
Oh yeah. Or maybe like our football team, where the game never existed. Where they went down or went up to Illinois. I never heard that before.
I thought the same thing.
I never heard that.
What now?
We're 0-2 with a no contest. I didn't know that was possible.
Was a no contest?
It was a no contest, as if it was a boxing match.
Yeah.
How is that even possible?
It was like
I'd rather just lose.
Like heavy rains, then there was lightning. They delayed. Then there was heavy rains and lightning. They delayed, and they finally just said, "Go home."
The stadium had no lights too. I think is part of the issue.
Yeah.
Oh,
so they couldn't play at night.
Yeah.
And they were looking at playing somewhere else. I think they were going to find, but then it's like we got to be home sometime.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's crazy. Actually, I didn't know that.
Like so Adobe, I don't know how you pronounce it. Adobe Acrobat.
Acrobat.
There we go. Acrobat will always ask you if it wants to be. You want to make it the default browser, and I say no every time. It keeps on asking me over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And when you I've made that mistake, and you click yes, and it's basically a virus. and it's no, really, it is super hard.
So predatory.
It like burrows in, like yeah, it's like one of those worms in Kennedy's brain. It gets deep in there, and IT. I remember I had Lyon IT that took them like a long time to kind of finally find this thing and get rid of it. So
Microsoft Edge will do that. So Microsoft Edge, if you try to, they got sued, I think, over this actually. So when you would look up Google Chrome at one point, they would like have this like fake Google Chrome be the first one that would pop up. So if you downloaded it from it, it would give you a virus on your computer. Yeah. Because they didn't want you to get Chrome so bad. And then I think they got sued and had to just like actually just change it. But that like stuff like that. But Adobe is so predatory. And they'll also, this is another thing they'll do. If you have pirated, and don't ask me how I know this because, whatever.
You just heard some people.
Yeah, I heard it through the grapevine. But if you have a pirated Adobe product, and Adobe finds out that you have a pirated Adobe product, they'll like send this like thing into your computer, and it will basically like take over your Adobe product, whatever you have, and it will be like, hey, this is pirated. You can't use this anymore. And it will like basically shut down your access to the product.
Whoa,
you'll click on it, and it just won't open anymore until you buy it. It's insane. I don't know how
that's a gangster move. Yeah, I like that.
I don't know how they have the access to do that, but.
I'm sure I respect them more actually because of that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they're investing in drones. So you go out in your driveway and
drone strike you for using a pirated.
That's what's flying over Estonia nowadays. That's what's almost causing World War III. It's actually Adobe.
It's Adobe just looking for software pirates. But good to me. One of the peak piracy periods was Napster and LimeWire.
Oh, that was my childhood.
Oh, yes. That was, why can't music be free?
Yeah.
And then remember, you'd have to download as many of them as you possibly could on your computer before somebody, because everybody knew the good times were going to end sooner or later. And then, they pulled the plug. Yeah, that was like peak piracy. That was a beautiful thing.
That is a good point, though. It's like that's something I think Kieran and I have talked about this before, where it's like in order to like watch even NFL games, you have to buy like all these different subscriptions.
Yeah,
you have to own.
And it's becoming ridiculous. So eventually, I don't know when it'll happen, but the current subscription model has to change, especially if what you say is true. If piracy is a thing.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is like. So that's now affected like movies too. So like what happened is like all these piracy websites, right? When like subscription models, the big thing was like with streaming, it was really bad for like movies and stuff because the royalties were so low when streaming first came out. So that's why originally all these streaming services started to pop up like Peacock and all them, because Peacock didn't want to get money from Netflix and then get basically no money. They wanted all the money for themselves, but now that like everything's back to normal, people are just pirating all this stuff. So like the revenue for like movies is like at the lowest it's been in a very, very long time. And it's like kind of scary because, movie companies are now like even less likely to take risks on movies than they were before because movies aren't going to make money hardly anyway. So might as well just make.
Well, the pandemic sure didn't help. And then, that coupled with, TV technology being so darn good that, you can really have a pretty good movie going experience. I mean, there's, the big, what do you call the big screen that,
like IMAX?
IMAX.
Okay.
Yeah. That seems to do well because it's something you just can't replicate at home.
Yeah.
But, just the local theaters, it's something that if you have a pretty decent sized TV, sound bar and everything, you're close to a pretty good experience on your own terms.
Yeah, and it's not how it used to be. Like, TV royalties were so good because like back in the day, it was like if you wanted to watch a film before like VHS, it was like, well, how do you watch it? You have to own a projector and you have to buy reels, of these films or know somebody who has it, and that wasn't good. So and now it's like all streaming. So like, how do you? And then that was the other thing is like, how do you regulate it too? Because there's also now a thing where because everything's digital, there's like now like it's not really lost media, but it's like unplayable media. Like, for example, 28 Days Later was in that realm for a really long time before the new movie came out and Netflix acquired it.
Right.
You couldn't buy physical copies of it. You couldn't buy it on Prime or anywhere like that because Prime never like negotiated it. So you couldn't buy it on anything online whatsoever. Nobody had it on streaming services. So you couldn't get it. You just couldn't watch this movie at all unless you bought a copy way back in the day.
Yeah.
So it's like now that issue's coming up with a lot of media too, is it's kind of just getting lost.
Yeah,
and forgotten. And that's the issue that people have with like Netflix is like, well, you know, for example, okay, let's say, you know, I don't know, take Orange is the New Black. You know, Orange is the New Black was really good on Netflix 20 years ago. But now, like, I'm saying future now, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like, but now it's not good anymore. So we're just going to pull it from Netflix. Well, they never made physical copies of it. So, you know, how are you ever going to watch that legally anymore? You know, you have to pirate it at that point. And that's the other issue that people are running into. They don't like that.
And kids, if you're listening at home, Jayson is not, you know, giving advice on how to break the law.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, the thing is at some point,
right,
there has to be a physical media version of it. Because, like, if you don't, what happens if Netflix goes under? Which probably would never happen, but, you know, Sears went under or whatever. So.
Yeah, you know, one kind of related in a way, the movie The Apprentice, you know, the one that came out about Donald Trump in his early days with Roy Cohn, that never went to streaming. It's still all, you know, it's on the different streamers, but you have to pay for it. Mm-hmm. And I've been waiting, you know how you wait for a movie to finally, one of them to pick it up and then you could watch for free. And there's a conspiracy there, you know, that I'm convinced, you know, that they're having like a paywall just so enough people can't watch it.
That's an interesting theory. And see, that's like, now that comes back to like, absolute rights. Like in your sense, like, if I should be allowed to this media, no, you know, like it's my right. I should, if I get technically you can buy it, so whatever. But
you can pay for it, but you know,
but that's like harboring how people think, right?
That's you know, for pay, it's going to suppress the viewership versus if Netflix, you know, said okay, it's time they're going to publish it. So many people will watch it on Netflix, anything on Netflix, and so then they have to calculate. Okay, now we're in, you know, the administration's crosshairs. Yeah,
you know,
you just don't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
I heard it's not that good, but you know,
the acting is good. But I've actually watched the movie. Don't ask me how I've watched it, but I've watched it. So
okay.
we're live, by the way.
I've seen the movie. I have definitely seen the movie. It happened.
But how long until movies and like movie theaters become like vinyl records? I feel like we're already close.
No, it's very close.
Yeah.
And I'm worried about that because I love doing a good theater. You know, like going to the theater and stuff.
I went to a movie theater for the first time in like years. Last winter break, I took my nephew to like some Sonic movie. It's terrible.
Sonic Hedgehog.
So I was like, you know, just doing a favor to my sister. I didn't want to hang out with my nephew, but like I got there and I had the greatest time because one, it was nostalgic. Like I felt like I was back in my childhood. So like that was cool. And then also I took like the best nap of my life because the chairs were like
they
really like luxurious recliners, much better than the chairs at my parents' house. And they had heated seats too as the wintertime. So I feel like movie theaters just need to maybe like adjust what they're doing a bit. Shout out to Lowe's Movie Theater is what I think I was at.
I feel like this is turning into a Joe Rogan podcast.
I kind of like it. I kind of like it though. This is fun.
Oh man! Well,
this is free speech, by the way. This is what you get. This is what you're missing.
That's why we did this. You know, to show what free speech is really all about.
Yeah.
All right, and I'll just go back to probably the wisest words spoken that the Lions, Super Bowl champs. I'm there.
What's your prediction? Who do you think they're going to play in the Super Bowl if that's the case?
Doesn't matter. It does not matter. Actually, maybe next one I'll just I'm still not certain if they're going to go undefeated the rest of the season. That's going to be next.
The Bills?
No, the Lions.
Oh,
what about Tigers?
Okay, to show I'm realistic, Tigers, they're that is going to be historic as far as the biggest gag ever. I mean, they were up by what, 14 and a half
15
games?
and a half, yeah.
Oh, okay, rub it in.
There's a
Yes, here's a wound, some salt, please. Yeah, it's they're just it's in their heads. Well, we're going to have to call this the something experience now. The As the World Turns or Burns experience. Watch out, Joe Rogan. We're coming after you. But thank you, guys. Once again, can't speak English. I started that way. I'm going to end that way. But thank you all for listening and watching the As the World Turns or Burns, extended version, director's cut, and just keep watching us. I always ask Jayson about where you can find our podcast, and he always corrects me that that's the other podcast. But the other podcast is going to soon be wrapping up.
Well, wrapping up, but it's gonna be like a cocoon, it's gonna be turning into a butterfly. It's a whole new chapter.
I got to end on that poetry. It's just pure beauty. All right, but thank you guys and everything, and thank you to our audience. Please like or subscribe us, share. And we'll be back with you in 2 weeks with another episode. Take care.
Don't pirate things.
This podcast is sponsored in part by Lyon College and KILT Studios. Thank you to Jonah Winter for the intro and outro music.